Every time in my life, I just can't. I give totally myself and I suffer. And it's not fair, but I guess I have to accept it and just leave.
Is this yet another relationship crashing and burning, Natalie? Wow, seems to be quite the habit, doesn't it? So this might be a good time for some introspection. Maybe sit down, ask some difficult questions about yourself, and try and work out why things always seem to go wrong. But instead, Natalie chooses to blame everything on Josh.
I'm not interested anymore in see you. It took me a year and a half to understand, like, you do not want me.
It's always someone else's fault. You don't want me, says Natalie. But why is that, Natalie? Now, before we dive into the breakdown of this relationship, let's just rewind back to the start. So the last time we saw Natalie, she'd come to the realization that this relationship may not be going the direction she wants. Yes, Josh bought her a car, and yes, he may have helped her move into her apartment, but Natalie was also looking for someone who'd be more physically and emotionally present for her. And when she arrives for their date, there's no hiding her feelings.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, really?
You can give me a hug. Great.
Now, in the last episode, Natalie told us that she was upset with Josh for not inviting her to spend Christmas and Halloween with his family. But it's starting to look like that's just one piece of this complex puzzle. Natalie looks genuinely upset, and she doesn't even want any physical contact with Josh. You can literally see her lean away and recoil at his touch. So is she just being her usual drama queen self? Or is this conversation much more serious than we originally thought?
I feel like there were many times I told you what I want. Your word said one stuff, but your action was telling me, Natalie, I don't want you.
I think Natalie's referring to her expectation of marriage here. Like, in the last episode, she told us that prior to moving to LA, she made her expectations very clear to Josh. She told him that she expected their relationship to progress to the next level.
In previous relationship, I would have been married by now. I told him when I moved to LA, there are no excuses. We're in the same city.
Yes, Natalie, but that might also explain why you've had 3 failed marriages. Look, it couldn't be more obvious that Josh isn't ready to progress this relationship. He's clearly not 100%. So the fact that Natalie's so devastated that they're not married by now is kind of weird. Maybe the correct question to ask here, Natalie, is why you moved across the country for a man you barely knew. Because that was the case. These two barely knew each other.
I was excited for you to be out here, and I tried too. As much as you were...
Yeah, you did. You tried.
As much as you were...
Josh, I've never been to your home. You tried.
Look, the truth is, just because these two have long-distance dated for 2 years, that doesn't mean that they knew each other. Like, she's never even been to his apartment, for God's sake. I think that says everything you need to know. Josh has been keeping Natalie at arm's length. So, at what point does Natalie also need to take responsibility? Like, what is it about her? What is it about her volatile personality that doesn't make Josh comfortable enough to introduce her to his daughter?
I did try. There was different circumstances.
Yeah, really? I'm woman 1 in a million, you know? And I deserve a great man. I don't want to waste my body, my mind, my feelings.
Now, Natalie ends that sentence by saying, for a guy who doesn't fight for me, who doesn't care for me. And to her credit, that definitely isn't Josh. Like, from what we've seen so far, he does seem like an apathetic man. He's not that fussed. Everything just seems to slide off his back. And in a way, that is a good thing. Like, that's the very reason he's able to cope with Natalie's dramatics. But the question is his attitude out of necessity, out of survival? Or is it, perhaps, because actually he doesn't care as much as he says he does?
You weak. And I can't be next to a man who is weak.
Wait, nothing, Josh? She just called you weak. You've got nothing to say back? Yeah, I think this is a man who's tapped out. Just take a look at how these two are sitting. Natalie's hunched over like she's physically in pain. And Josh is just sitting there awkwardly, unsure about what he should do. And frankly, if that isn't a literal representation of their relationship, then I don't know what is. She's in pain, he can see it, he understands it, but he just doesn't know what to do about it. He doesn't know how to make her happy.
I 100% understand her feelings and her emotions and, you know, like where she's coming from. No matter what happens, I still care for her.
Those words, that phrase that Josh just said, no matter what happens, that to me sounds like he's gearing up for a breakup. And interestingly, he's doing nothing to stop it from happening. He's not fighting to save the relationship. In fact, he actually does the complete opposite. Josh is the one who starts to talk about how the two of them are wrong for each other. He's the one that tells Natalie she might need to look elsewhere to get what she wants.
My life, it's very complicated, and you need somebody that can be around more, or maybe somebody that doesn't have kids, that you can start your own family.
Isn't it interesting that instead of trying to fix their issues, Josh is all too ready to cut and run? But are we surprised by this? Natalie's proved over and over again that she is a real handful. So with a family of his own, with kids to bear in mind, with his career in the entertainment industry, Josh needs someone who's gonna add to his life. Not just someone who's gonna be another bird he has to feed in his nest.
Every time in my life, I just can't. I give totally myself and I suffer. And it's not fair, but I guess I have to accept it and just leave.
That's a real complex one to unpack, isn't it? Look, Natalie's clearly the kind of girl who wears her heart on her sleeve. That's precisely why she gets married so quickly. She falls fast and hard, and she falls for any guy who seems to show her kindness or buys her nice things. It's the kind of love where she gives herself totally, in her words. But that's not exactly healthy, especially when it's not reciprocated. And the very fact that Josh isn't reciprocating that love means that she's right about needing to leave this relationship.
I'm not interested anymore in see you. It took me a year and a half to understand, like, you do not want me.
Josh doesn't want Natalie in the same way that she wants him. She wants full commitment. She wants marriage, kids, a big house. She wants the American dream. But as for Josh, well, I hate to say it, but the guy who owns a modelling agency may just want a pretty girl on his arm. He may just be in this for 15 minutes of fame. I mean, he's clearly not looking to integrate her into his life. He's keeping her separate. He hasn't even invited her to his home. They're clearly on very different wavelengths.
I just know that you don't love me and there's no point. I don't want to have the feelings that I'm not loved.
I understand that. I like you a lot. I really do. I like you a lot. I do.
His relationship is crumbling before his eyes, and Josh can't muster up the words to say he loves her. He doesn't love her. Natalie's right to leave. She isn't gonna find what she's looking for with Josh. Now, Josh goes on to say that he's genuinely sorry. He knows that Natalie needs someone different, and it's at that point that Natalie begins to cry.
I love my life, I love my mom, and sometimes you don't have to have men to love. Men bring me pain.
Natalie seems to grieve as quickly as she loves. No sooner are they breaking up than she's already at the acceptance stage of grief. She says things like, maybe I'm meant to be alone. It appears to be a coping mechanism. It's her way to convince herself life will be better off without him. And as Josh grabs Natalie's hand to give her a kiss, she manages to eke out a small smile.
Sometimes we fall for people who just not for us. And I fall for a guy who distracts me emotionally and makes me weak.
Why is Natalie speaking like she's in the military or something? Like, what does getting distracted emotionally even mean when it comes to dating? Isn't that precisely what's supposed to happen in a relationship? Well, whatever the truth, she's now accepted that she's not the girl for Josh, and all that now remains is for the pair to say their final goodbyes.
I don't think that there's much more that I could have possibly done. I've given her my time, I've given her my attention, I've given her my help, I've given her my connections.
Josh claims that he gave Natalie all that he was willing to give her, and I actually believe him. It just wasn't enough. Natalie believes that she deserves more. So with that, Natalie walks away. She makes her way to the car park, and it's there that she picks a tree to hug and begins crying against it. I mean, it's a bit much, isn't it? But we do know that Natalie has a thing for trees. It's all very dramatic. And after giving the tree a good hug, she then decides to resume her crying sat on the floor. It's very sad. It's not nice to see anyone crying like that. But all I can think as Natalie's bawling her eyes out is how awkward it's gonna be in a couple of minutes when Josh walks out of the restaurant and sees her curled up on the sidewalk like that. Like, is that what she's hoping for? Does she want him to see? Does she want him to know how hurt she is?
And it makes me feel so much terrible, alone in this country with no friends in LA. I have no one. With mom. I mean, I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Given that Natalie's already admitted that she moved to LA to be with Josh, this puts her in a sticky situation. Like, how's she gonna pay her rent? As far as we know, he's still helping her with that. She's not working. There's a lot of unknowns. It's not clear where Natalie's gonna go from here. And one thing's for sure, it'll be interesting to see how quick and how hard Natalie falls back in love again.